The day I turned 18 was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. At least, that's what I had always imagined. I thought maybe my father would smile at me for once. Maybe he'd tell me he was proud of the young man I had become. Maybe we'd have dinner together, laugh about old memories, and celebrate my future. Instead, my stepmother walked into my room carrying a large black trash bag. She dropped it at my feet. "Pack your things," she said without emotion. I stared at her, confused. "What?" "You heard me. You're 18 now. You're an adult. It's time to leave." I laughed nervously, convinced it had to be a joke. Then I looked at her face. She wasn't joking. I walked downstairs, expecting my father to put an end to this. He was sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee. "Dad?" I asked quietly. "Is she serious?" He didn't even look at me. After a long silence, he finally whispered, "Maybe, it's for the best." Those 6 words shattered everything I believed about family. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him why. But the words never came. For years, my stepmother had made it clear I wasn't welcome. After my mother passed away when I was 10, she slowly took over every part of the house. The family photos with my mom disappeared. Her favorite paintings vanished from the walls. Even my bedroom became smaller after she turned the guest room into a luxury walk-in closet. She constantly reminded me that I wasn't her son. "You're just another mouth to feed," she'd often say. I tried my best to stay invisible. I got good grades. I worked part-time after school. I never caused trouble. Still, nothing I did was ever enough. The only reason I stayed was because I believed my father still loved me. That illusion ended on my 18th birthday. Within an hour, my clothes, books, and a few childhood memories were stuffed into the trash bag. My stepmother opened the front door. "Good luck," she said with a smirk. The door slammed behind me. Just like that. I was homeless. I checked my wallet. $53. That was everything I owned. I spent the afternoon walking aimlessly through the city, trying to figure out where to go. Every phone call I made ended the same way. "I'm sorry. I wish I could help. There just isn't enough room." By sunset, I had nowhere left to go. I found a bench in a quiet park and sat there, hugging my backpack. The temperature dropped as darkness covered the city. Cars passed by. Families laughed as they walked home. Meanwhile, I wondered if anyone even noticed I had disappeared. That night was the longest night of my life. I barely slept. Every strange noise made me jump. Every passing stranger made me fear the worst. As the sun rose the next morning, I made myself a promise. No matter how hard life became, no matter how long it took, I would never beg anyone for love, money, or a place to stay again. If I wanted a future, I would build it with my own hands. What I didn't know was that this promise would eventually lead me back to the very house I had just been thrown out of. And when I returned, everything would be different. The first few weeks were brutal. I spent my days searching for work and my nights sleeping wherever I could find shelter. Sometimes it was a bus station. Sometimes it was a cheap motel when I had enough money. Most nights, it was the back seat of an abandoned car behind an old shopping center. Hunger became something I got used to. There were days when a single slice of pizza was all I ate. I learned that coffee shops often threw away perfectly good pastries at closing time, and grocery stores sometimes marked sandwiches down to almost nothing just before they expired. I never imagined survival would become my full-time job. One rainy afternoon, I walked into a small neighborhood diner hoping to dry off for a few minutes. The owner, an older man named Frank, noticed I was soaked from head to toe. "You looking for food or work?" he asked. I hesitated. Honestly, Both. Instead of chasing me away, Frank smiled. I've got dishes that need washing. It doesn't pay much, but you'll get a meal every shift. That job saved my life. Every morning, I arrived before sunrise. I scrubbed dishes until my hands cracked. I swept floors, cleaned grease traps, and stayed long after everyone else had gone home. Frank watched me carefully. After a few weeks, he pulled me aside. You know why I hired you? I shook my head. Because I saw someone who refused to quit. Those words meant more to me than he could ever know. For the first time in years, someone believed in me. Frank became more than a boss. He became the father I wished I'd had. One evening, he handed me an old envelope. Inside was $200. I can't take this, I said. It's not charity, Frank replied. It's an investment. An investment? In your future. Using that money, I rented a tiny room above an old laundromat. It wasn't much. The walls were cracked. The heater barely worked. The mattress felt like sleeping on concrete. But it was mine. For the first time since being thrown out, I had a key in my pocket. Every night after work, I studied online business courses using the free computers at the public library. I became fascinated with technology. While everyone else spent weekends relaxing, I spent mine learning how websites worked, how companies advertised online, and how small businesses could reach customers through the internet. Months turned into years. Eventually, I saved enough money to buy a second-hand laptop. It was slow. The battery barely lasted 20 minutes. But to me, it looked like opportunity. I started building simple websites for local businesses. At first, I charged almost nothing. Then my work improved. One customer recommended me to another. Soon I had more clients than I could handle. At 23, I quit the diner and started my own digital marketing company. Frank was the first person I called. You did it, he said proudly. No, I replied. We did. Over the next several years, the business exploded. Companies from across the country hired my team. We opened offices in 3 cities. Magazines featured my story. People called me a self-made entrepreneur. None of them knew how many nights I had cried myself to sleep wondering if I would survive. Then one morning, while preparing for an important meeting, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. This is Attorney Michael Carter, the voice said. I'm calling regarding your father. My heart stopped. I regret to inform you that he passed away 3 days ago. I sat in silence. I hadn't spoken to my father in nearly 12 years. The lawyer continued. There's something in his will that requires your presence. What is it? I'm afraid I can't discuss it over the phone. You'll need to come home. Home. I hadn't heard that word in years. As I ended the call, memories came rushing back. The black trash bag. The slammed front door. The promise I made on that cold park bench. I looked out the window of my office. Was I really ready to return to the place that had destroyed my childhood? I had no idea. That stepping back into that town would uncover a secret my father had been hiding for more than a decade, and it would change my life forever. The drive back to my hometown felt longer than it ever had before. Every mile brought back memories I had spent years trying to forget. The old gas station where my dad used to buy me ice cream. The baseball field where he taught me how to throw my first fastball. The elementary school where my mother kissed my forehead every morning before class. For a moment, I almost turned the car around. But I didn't. Some questions deserve answers, no matter how painful they are. The lawyer's office hadn't changed much. The same brick building. The same wooden sign. Even the waiting room smelled exactly as I remembered. When I walked inside, I immediately saw my stepmother. She looked older than I remembered. Her expensive clothes couldn't hide the stress on her face. The moment she recognized me, her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "I was invited." She laughed. "Invited? Don't embarrass yourself. Your father made his choice years ago." Before I could answer, Attorney Michael Carter stepped into the room. "Gentlemen, and Mrs. Wilson. It's time." We followed him into a conference room. A thick folder rested on the polished oak table. Attorney Carter adjusted his glasses before speaking. "Your father updated his will 6 months before his passing." My stepmother smiled confidently. She folded her hands as if she'd already won. The lawyer began reading. He listed savings accounts, retirement funds, personal belongings. Everything was divided exactly as expected. My stepmother received the investment portfolio. Several family heirlooms were donated to charity. Then, the lawyer stopped. He removed a sealed envelope from the folder. "This section is to be read only if both parties are present." The room fell completely silent. He broke the seal and unfolded a handwritten letter. "This message is from your father." His voice softened as he began reading aloud. "To my son. If you're hearing this, it means I no longer have the chance to tell you the truth myself. I've carried this guilt every single day since the day you left." I couldn't breathe. The lawyer continued. "You probably believe I abandoned you. The truth is far more complicated." I looked across the table. For the first time, my stepmother no longer looked confident. She looked nervous. Very nervous. Attorney Carter turned the page. "The day you were forced out of the house wasn't my decision." "What?" I whispered. The lawyer kept reading. "Your stepmother gave me an impossible choice. She threatened to divorce me, take everything I had, and drag us through years of legal battles if I didn't force you to leave." My stepmother suddenly stood up. "That's enough." Attorney Carter looked at her calmly. "I'm legally required to finish." "You don't have to listen to this nonsense," she shouted. "I absolutely do," he replied. She sat back down, furious. The lawyer continued reading. "I was weak. I chose peace over courage. It was the greatest mistake of my life." Tears filled my eyes. For 12 years, I had believed my father simply didn't love me. Now I realized something even more painful. He had loved me. But he had failed me. The lawyer reached the final page. His eyes met mine. "There's one final instruction." He took a deep breath before reading the last paragraph. And the words that came next left everyone in the room speechless. Attorney Carter unfolded the final page and slowly adjusted his glasses. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "To my son, if there is one thing I ask after my death, it is that you finally receive the home that should have always been yours." The room fell silent. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed louder. My stepmother leaned forward. "What does that mean?" she demanded. The attorney continued reading. "The family home, including the land on which it stands, shall become the sole property of my son. This decision is final and legally binding." Her face turned pale. "No," she whispered. Attorney Carter placed another document on the table. "This is the updated deed. It was transferred into a trust 6 months ago. Upon Mr. Wilson's passing, ownership automatically passed to his son." My stepmother shot to her feet. "That's impossible. This house belongs to me." "I'm afraid it doesn't," the attorney replied. "Your husband completed every legal requirement before his death." She slammed her hand on the table. "I'll fight this in court." "You certainly have the right to try," Carter said calmly. But after reviewing the documents, I can confidently tell you that your chances of overturning this decision are extremely small. She turned toward me with anger burning in her eyes. This is your fault. For the first time in 12 years, I looked at her without fear. My fault? I asked quietly. You threw an 18-year-old kid out with $53 and nowhere to go. The only reason we're here today is because of the choices you made. She looked away. For once. She had no answer. A week later, I returned to the house. The same white wooden fence. The same maple tree in the front yard. The same porch where my mother used to sit every Sunday morning with a cup of coffee. Time had changed almost everything. But somehow, the house still felt familiar. Attorney Carter handed me a small envelope. Inside was a single brass key. My father kept this? I asked. He smiled. He told me he hoped one day you'd use it. My hands trembled as I unlocked the front door. The lock clicked. Slowly, I stepped inside. Dust floated through the afternoon sunlight. The hallway looked smaller than I remembered. The walls had been repainted. The furniture was different. But memories filled every corner. I walked into the living room and froze. Above the fireplace hung a photograph I hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. It was my mother holding me when I was 5 years old. I stared at it in disbelief. I thought this picture disappeared. Attorney Carter nodded. Your father hid it in his office after your stepmother tried to throw it away. Tears filled my eyes. He had protected what little he could. Too little. Too late. But he had tried. Over the next month, I renovated the house. Not because it needed luxury. Because it deserved love. I repaired the old porch where my mother used to read. I restored the hardwood floors my father had installed himself. I planted white roses beneath the front window, my mother's favorite flowers. Neighbors often stopped to watch. Many remembered what had happened years earlier. One elderly woman smiled and said, "Your mother would be so proud of you." Those words meant more than any business award I'd ever received. One afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. When I opened it, my stepmother was standing there. She looked completely different. Gone were the expensive clothes and confident smile. She looked tired. Older. Broken. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said softly. I lost the court case. I lost the money. I lost everything. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. She looked past me into the house. The place looks beautiful. I nodded. It finally feels like home. Tears rolled down her face. I'm sorry. I know those words can't erase what I did. I was jealous of the love your father had for you. I convinced myself that if you disappeared, we'd finally be a real family. I was wrong. I listened without interrupting. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought revenge would feel satisfying. It didn't. Anger is heavy. Carrying it for 12 years had been exhausting. Finally, I spoke. I forgive you. She looked up, surprised. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. This house belonged to my parents. It belongs to me now. I can't let you live here. She nodded slowly. I understand. She turned to leave. Before she reached the gate, I called after her. Wait. She stopped. I handed her the business card of a local shelter and a non-profit housing program I regularly donated to. They'll help you get back on your feet. She looked at the card, then back at me. After everything I did, you're still helping me? I smiled sadly. I'm helping because that's the kind of person my mother raised me to be. She covered her face and quietly walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. Months later, I turned my childhood home into more than just a house. The upstairs remained my residence. The downstairs became a community learning center where teenagers aging out of foster care could learn job skills, receive mentorship, and prepare for independent life. Every student who walked through those doors reminded me of the frightened 18-year-old carrying a black trash bag with nowhere to go. I made them one promise. You'll always have someone who believes in you. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't owning the house you were thrown out of. It's becoming the person who opens doors for others instead of closing them. And every time I unlocked my front door, I remembered one simple truth. Home isn't defined by walls, money, or inheritance. Home is the place where compassion lives. And after all those years, I had finally found mine.